Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to a retro RPG. But this one's a little bit different because I'm going to be covering a lot of versions of Dungeons Dragons over the next few weeks. And this time we're starting with Dungeons Dragons 4th edition and the Player's Handbook. This is because I'm going to be working on a series where I'm comparing rules and facets of Dungeons Dragons and other games as they go through different editions. And what I realised was there are large gaps in what I've covered. So over the next few weeks I'm going to be covering 4th edition, I'll be covering 3.5 edition, and I'm going to be covering the original D&D, OD&D. And I realised I'm going to have to do the rules breakdowns for these as well. So we'll be covering 4th edition, 3.5, OD&D, and while I covered the magenta box, which is somewhere behind me here, I never did a rules breakdown for it, so I'll be covering that as well. So we're going to be going through a lot of these. It's going to be separate to my weekly videos where I'll be covering lots of other games because I know people don't want me just to cover Dungeons & Dragons. But to start this new series and cover Dungeons & Dragons for that, I need to do these videos. So I'm going to be packing those out. I've already covered the versions of Shadowrun that I want to cover. We've done Cyberpunk and many other games where we've worked through all the editions. But for D&D, I needed to do these videos. So anyway, let's get on and look at the 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. So, this is the Player's Handbook for 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, which came out from Wizards of the Coast in 2008. And it's the first of 3 Player's Handbooks, because there was also Player's Handbook 2, Player's Handbook 3. And we'll see a reason for that in a wee while. Now, the cover, first off, I do quite like. It's very clean and fresh and new looking. I have to say, I do admire the way that they've designed it. Compared to the classic 3rd edition, which was a physical object that they created and then photographed to make the cover. This is just artwork. But, as I said, it's clean, it's fresh, I like it a lot. It's very enticing. And that carries over to the artwork inside and the look inside. You know, we've got an artwork of a certain style. It's not really cartoonish, and it's not really up to the standard of the greats, you know, the cover of the Beck Me box set by Larry Elmore, which was absolutely iconic, fantastic artwork. This, I think, will be forgotten. It's not quite as perfect, but I do like it. It's eye-catching and consistent across the entire game, which is a real positive. I also like the layout of the pages. It's very clean and fresh. If we go to the 3rd edition, we can see that we've got these parchment-style pages, which are a bit cluttered, but the rest of the pages have this outlying part, the edge of the page, which is a bit dark and oppressive. It makes the text have to squash up slightly. If we go back, we can see the text is larger. It's definitely more readable on a screen. I don't remember having problems with the 3rd edition physical Player's Handbook, but this just seems more readable, fresh, clean. And that's all good design work. Now, as I said, there are 3 Player's Handbooks, because if we go to the contents page for this one, we can see that the player character races are Dragonborn, Dwarf, Eladrin, Elf, Halfling, Human, and Tiefling. Whereas in Player's Handbook 2, we get Diva, Gnomes, Goliaths, Half-Orcs, and Shifters. And in Player's Handbook 3, we get Githzerai, Minotaurs, Shardmines, and Wilden. And then for the classes in Player's Handbook 1, we've got Clerics, Fighters, Paladins, Rangers, Rogues, Warlocks, Warlords, and Wizards. In Player's Handbook 2, you've got Avengers, Barbarians, Bards, Druids, which all feel very core to the game, maybe not Avengers, Invokers, Shamans, Sorcerers, Wardens. And then waiting until you get the 3rd one, we've got Ardents, Battleminds, Monks, Scions, Rune Priests, Seekers. So, to get some of the classic classes and races, you're needing all 3 Player's Handbooks. Now, if you're wanting to play a monk, which feels so integrated into 3rd edition and 5th edition, you've got to buy 3 Player's Handbooks. Even some of the races, you know, Gnomes and Half-Orcs, feel like they should be core species, but they were put into a later book. I'm not very keen on that. But today we're going to be focusing on the main book. So, let's have a look at the back cover, even though we've already peeked inside and mentioned a few things. So, the world needs heroes. In a fantastic world of magic and monsters, a new age of adventure unfolds.
This core rulebook for the Dungeons Dragons Roleplaying Game provides everything players need to create and run heroic characters through legendary Dungeons of Dread. The Player's Handbook features the 4th edition game rules, including character creation, combat and adventuring, classes and races, equipment and magic items, skills, feats, powers, and more. So, carrying on through, as we saw the credits page, some big names involved in here. Bill Slavicsek, who I've been a big fan of since the West End Games days of Star Wars D6. Mike Merles, of course, James Wyatt, even further down doing smaller jobs at the time, editing Jeremy Crawford, Kim Mohan, and we've got Christopher Perkins, all very big names now, having in the last week moved on to working for the Critical Role people. And it credits, of course, E. Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson, Dave Zeb Cook, Monty Cook, Skip Williams, Richard Bacon, and David Atkinson for their work on earlier editions. And it's dedicated to the memory of E. Gary Gygax, because of course he'd passed shortly before this. I've got a nice readable contents page, section on how to play, talking about what role-playing games are, the usual introduction. But it's got a lovely section on the history of Dungeons and Dragons. What's what in a Dungeon Dragon game? So player characters, dungeon masters, adventures, talking you through the dice, all the usually introductory stuff, talking through the different books, how do you play, what you do. We've got an example of play there as usual, the core mechanics, which are fairly simple. Roll a d20, you want to roll high, add modifiers, see if you've got the target number. The base mechanic as it has been from 3rd edition through to modern day. Now, 4th edition was an attempt to change Dungeons & Dragons, to get away from the old things and make it a bit more video gamey. And when we come on to the character classes, I'll deal with that a bit further. But anyway, we've got making characters, going through character creation, choose your race, class, ability scores, choose skills. This feels a lot more like how I want to build a character. You're choosing your race first. Because you are an elf wizard or an elf warrior, the race comes first, and the class comes next, and then you're doing all the other stuff. So character creation in 4th edition feels very, very much like the way I think. Oh, I'm going to play an elf this time, I'm going to play a dwarf, human, whatever. It's the first decision I make. But anyway, choose your class, ability scores, skills, feats, powers, equipment, fill in the numbers, and role-playing character details. Flesh out your character and details about your personality. And it goes through the different parts, fleshing them out, telling you what the stats are, the standard 6, talking about role-playing, and we've got alignment, and there are only 5 alignments here. We don't have the grid of 9 alignments as is standard. We only have good, lawful good, evil, chaotic evil, and unaligned. So they've kind of got rid of a bunch of the ones here, your chaotic good and all that are gone, which some of them are the more fun ones. Talk about deities, your mannerisms, your appearance, your background, what languages you might know, making checks, going through attack rolls, skill rolls, ability checks, what you do when you gain a level. In 4th edition, there are different tiers. As your character goes up levels, so if you're between 1st and 10th level, you're heroic tier. If you're 11th level through 20th level, you're paragon. And if you're 21st through 30th, you're epic. And you get to choose extra abilities based on those as your character becomes maybe more powerful. So we've got character advancement, talking about what you get at each level, what experience you need, how to fill in your character sheet, and then we're on to the character races. So we've got Dragonborn, details out the dragon breath. Physical qualities, playing them, what Dragonborn adventurers are like. We've got Dwarves. Play a dwarf if you want to be tough, gruff, and strong as bedrock. Playing a dwarf, dwarf adventurers, all the usual sections. Now we've got Eladrin, which I'm not really familiar with. These aren't part of 3rd or 5th edition, except in some kind of source book, which I never picked up. They are elves of a different type. Instead of the usual elf abilities, they have this phase step where they can teleport around. But we've got the usual sections, suggestions of names, etc. We've got elves who have their elven accuracy, going back to 2nd edition, really. We've got half-elves. We've got halflings, who are small and agile, much as they were in 3rd edition. We've got humans, brief covering them. And we've got tieflings. And then we're going to the character classes. Now, as I said, they tried to reinvent the way that things worked. So, to make it more equal, rather than a fighter just being able to roll and hit all the time, or use some feats, they gave everyone extra abilities. So let's carry on. The paragon paths as you get up to those levels. What different keywords, what type of actions. You've got your standard melee attacks, range attacks, close attacks, area attacks, targeting, hitting, etc. We've got the clerics first. Creating cleric. Then we got onto cleric powers. Now, these have their channel divinity powers, but they have spells. Now, level 1 at-will prayers. So, they're categorized in 3 ways. So, fighters will get various attacks they can do at will. You can do that anytime you want. So, a cleric has spells. They've got Lance of Faith, Priest Shield, Righteous Brand, Sacred Flame. They can cast that as many times they want a day. They have level 1 encounter prayers, which means you can only cast it once per encounter. So if you go into combat, you can cast that spell once. But if you do some travelling and then you get in another fight later in the day, you can cast it again. Cause Fear, Divine Glow, Healing Strike, Wrathful Thunder. And then we've got level 1 daily prayers, which means they can be cast once per day. So like a long rest. As long as you get a night's sleep, you can cast those spells again. And at first level, they've got Avenging Flame, Beacon of Hope, Cascade of Light, and Guardian of Faith. So you've got 3 sets of abilities. With wizards and clerics, obviously these are mainly spells, although they call them prayers for the clerics. But for your fighters and thieves and all that, they have other abilities which they can use at will, per encounter, or once per day. Anyway, we carry on through. And this feels a bit odd that all the abilities are within the class. It's not like the standard player's handbook, where you've got all the classes and everything, and then basically the second half of the book is just spells. No, everything's in different classes. We're going to find ourselves going through the character class section for quite a while, because there's pages and pages of spells for all of the different classes. So they've got level 2 utility prayers. These aren't combat abilities. They can be used outside combat. They're a utility thing. Encounter prayers, daily prayers. We're up to level 6, level 7 ones, level 16, level 19. So instead of getting a spell level every 2 levels, which has always been a bit confusing, that at level 8 you're casting level 4 spells, that every level you get more and more spell-like abilities. Your daily prayers in the clerics. So going right up to level 29. It's got the Paragon paths, so as you hit 11th level, you can choose new paths where you gain new abilities. We've got the Fighter, and as we see, they've got level 1 at-will exploits, where they can cleave, do a Reaping Strike, a Sure Strike, Tide of Iron. Encounter ones, so covering attack, passing attack, spinning sweep, Steel Serpent Strike, and daily exploits, so Brute Strength, Combat Strike, Villain's Menace. So they've got all these abilities that they can use different. So you're not just, if you're a fighter, roll to hit, roll your damage. You can do extra things and be far more effective in combat than a first level wizard or cleric. Whereas they get access to their prayers, where they can cast magic, you get access to exploits where you can do extra things in combat. I really quite like that. I can see why people disliked the way 4th edition had gone. But it's really quite interesting to give players, apart from wizards, things to consider. I wonder if in play it would have slowed things down. While I did play 4th edition, it was only a couple of sessions and we never leveled. And I think most of us were just playing it like Dungeons & Dragons we played in the past. So most of us were just rolling to hit. It was only the spellcaster that were bothering with these extra abilities. But this is 15 years ago, so I don't really remember how we did. Anyway, carrying on, we've got the exploits for the fighters. They're paragons, so they can become pit fighters or sword masters. We've got paladins, so they get their paladin powers at will prayers, encounter prayers, daily prayers, through the different levels, so utilities, right up to level 29 for them. They're paragon paths, they can become a champion order or an astral weapon, a hospitaller, justicars. We've got rangers, and again these have exploits, so level 1 at will exploits, encounter exploits, daily exploits, right through to level 29 for them as well. Their paragon paths are battlefield archer, beast stalker, pathfinder, storm warden. We're on to the rogue, and they have their exploits, going right up to level 29, and then paragon paths, so they can be a cat burglar, a dagger master, master infiltrator, shadow assassin. We've got warlocks. Again, they've got their spells. They become fey touched. We've got warlords who have exploits of their own kind. These are supposed to control battles, be a more sort of commander type. They can become battle captains or combat veterans. Then we've got wizards. Then we've got, of course, all their spells, going right up to 29th when they get Meteor Storm, and they can be battle mages, blood mages, spellstorm mages, a wizard of the Spiral Tower. Then we've got epic destinies, so as you're getting very high up, you can choose what direction they're going. Demigods, eternal seekers. Got a chapter detailing the skills, how you train up skills, difficulty classes, and then listing out all the skills. We've got feats, which work very much like they did it in 3rd edition and work in 5th edition. So we've got different feats, a big list of them. Multi-class feats, we've got standard equipment section, so different armour, different weapons. It's all laid out fairly similarly. We've got adventuring gear, magic items, magic armour. Now this does seem to be a lot more of the stuff which doesn't tend to be detailed until the Dungeon Master's Guide. We are getting, magic items up to +5 in here. Ghostfire's +5 weapon. Or, cloth armour. There's even +6. Trollskin +6 armour for 3 million gold pieces. You've got the magic weapons going right up to Holy Avenger +6. Holy symbols, rods, magic staffs. This does all feel like stuff which is usually in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Neck slot items, so it's very much like slots. Although Dungeons & Dragons has always worked that way, that you can wear 2 rings, you can wear 1 necklace. This is setting up as slots, very video gamey. But Dungeons & Dragons has always worked that. This is just putting it into common, more modern parlance. Wondrous items, potions, talking about adventuring, quests and encounters, rewards, exploration, different mounts, rest and recovery, talking through combat now, your different types of actions, your different defenses, showing different paths you can make in your attacks. We've got different conditions, attack modifiers, creatures' sizes and space, how much they take up on the battle maps. Very much detailing out battle maps, but we've got other actions we can take. Coup de grace, crawl, delay, escape, detailing out all the actions. Does seem to be a bit more detailed than 3rd edition and 5th edition, as if it is laying out things that you choose, making it more video gamey. Then we've got death and dying, where first brought in death saves. We've got rituals, which are more complex types of spells. A list of those. We're getting right towards the back now. Playtester credits, an index, a character sheet which looks very familiar, it doesn't look very different. There is a lot of information on here though. An advert for D&D Insider, and that's us to the back cover. So, Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. It's got a bad reputation. I don't think it's deserved. It is very different. It doesn't feel much like Dungeons & Dragons apart from the core mechanic. But the way they've laid this out, I like quite a bit. I think that could be really interesting to play, but I can see why people would be set against it. From the look of the book, I really think it's well produced. I like the consistent style through it all going from the cover through to the interior artwork. I like the fact that it's far easier to read, it's a lot brighter, cleaner. It's a really nicely presented book. I'm starting to think that 4th edition has just a terrible reputation which it does not deserve.
So that was the Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition Player's Handbook. And I kind of like a lot of what they were doing in there, although it's a very different feeling game to 3rd edition and 5th edition. I like the way that they were balancing out what a fighter can do with what a mage can do. So everybody's sort of choosing from these abilities, whether it's working out you're going to cast a fireball, or whether you're doing some special attack which is going to severely damage an enemy. You all have these choices to make, and it makes it far more than just the player who's playing the fighter type rolling the dice to hit, and then they're waiting while everybody else chooses what they're doing and plays more tactically, choosing spells to cast, choosing area effects, all of those kind of things. Everybody's getting to make those decisions. Although I do think that might slow combat down quite vastly. Now obviously I'll be doing a rules breakdown of this and going over how these rules work. In the basic, they're going to be very, very similar to other versions of Dungeons & Dragons, because I remember when we did play it, and I said it was only for a few sessions, we never even got to level. So we were playing it just with the very basic things. We weren't really using the extra abilities much. But at its core, it's Dungeons & Dragons. It's just a different take on it. And I think 4th edition has been pretty maligned. People hated it, and I don't see what there is to hate. Although I can understand people not wanting to play this version and preferring the other editions. Because as I've said many times in the past, 3rd edition is my favourite. But anyway, as usual, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough as usual. So thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.